Hey everybody, welcome to the DW Plays video. This time I am taking a look at a bit of an oddity. This is Probotector for the Sega Mega Drive. Notice I'm saying Mega Drive specifically because this was only released in PAL regions. You may be wondering, what the heck is Probotector? Well, it's the European version of Contra Hardcore. Because apparently Europeans can't handle humanoid or human violence at all back in the 90s. This is one of those weird things where the original Contra on the Nintendo Entertainment System was also censored. They called that one Probotector 2. And I already did a video on that, but this is the Sega Genesis game Contra Hardcore, but released in the European market, which means that instead of humans, you get robots. Which is weird. I don't know why they thought that was any less violent, because that was kind of the point here. I mean, even the briefing here is given by a robot instead of a human general. It's the same exact game, with the same exact mechanics and everything. It's just they replaced all the living beings with robots. Because apparently Europeans are just completely incapable of handling that. It just had to be censored. It's one of those stupid things that... And, of course, I completely screwed this up immediately. So, here's the thing about Contra. I'm not very good at it. I never have been. And part of that is because I didn't play these games back in the day. I did not have access to any of them back in the day, not even Contra Hardcore, even though I did have a Sega Genesis back in the day. Now, the thing is, Contra Hardcore is generally considered one of the harder games in the Contra series, partly because it's a lot faster than most of the other ones, and partly because in the European and North American versions, you die in one hit, which is not the case in the Japanese version. In the Japanese version, you can take 3 hits before dying, which makes things a lot easier. And in this, you go down instantly with 1 hit, which is really irritating. Because you make a single mistake, and instantly you have to go back to whatever it was you messed up there. And that includes just walking into things, by the way, which is incredibly obnoxious. But one of the things that ostensibly makes this a bit more manageable than other Contra games is that you can see up at the top you have A, B, C, and D for your various weapon slots, and you can actually switch between them by pressing the A button on the Genesis pad. And theoretically, that means that the game is more manageable than other Contra games where you only have the one weapon at any given time, and so you're going to want to go with the spread shot. In this, you can have quite a few different weapons. Now, the thing about Contra Hardcore, though, is because you die in 1 hit, the entire game is basically a matter of memorizing exactly where the enemies are going to be, and memorizing their exact attack patterns so you can just dodge everything. Which is easier said than done. Because even reducing the game down to a matter of pattern recognition and memorization, you end up with situations like that, where you die anyway because reasons. Like that. So now we have to start this whole thing over from where that giant boss came in. And by the way, this is the end of the stage. So you have to go into the final boss for this stage with whatever the game's going to give you between now and then, which is not much. And you have to sit through this again, which is quite annoying. Now, again, I'm not very good at this game. I'm not very good at any game like this, really. But, in this particular case, It's not even necessarily a matter of being good at the game, because it is just kind of punishing in terms of difficulty. Which was fairly typical for arcade games back in the day, don't get me wrong. But, that's kind of the problem. The Japanese version lets you take 3 hits before going down, whereas this one doesn't. You're stuck with whatever the game gives you, and, then you just kind of have to hope that it works. So, Americans and Europeans really got the short end of the stick on the difficulty there. It ends up being one of the more difficult games for the Sega Genesis or Mega Drive, of course, depending on which version you're playing. It's going to be Contra Hardcore or Probotector. But again, same game. And this weapon is not great. And of course, instead of jumping onto the platform, I jump directly into the shot, which is always fun. And by fun, I mean incredibly obnoxious and irritating. Yeah, in case you can't tell, I don't really like this game either. By the way, if he touches you, you die. And that includes if his legs touch you. Which is just... that's just BS. So, yeah. Welcome to Probotector, aka Contra Hardcore. If you're interested in picking this game up for yourself, well, go for it. I mean, it's in the Contra Anniversary Collection. They include all the versions of Contra Hardcore in that, including both the Japanese and the North American versions. If you're going to play one of those, I would recommend the Japanese version, because it's a hell of a lot more manageable than the European and North American versions. But if you're one of those people who's like, hey, you're not a real gamer unless you play the hardcore version that's all super difficult and everything, then whatever. I don't really care one way or the other. But there you go, folks. That's Probotector for the Mega Drive. It's kind of an interesting look back in history to when games were pretty different in some ways between different regions. These days, the region differences are mostly things like localizations, and so you end up with different languages, but that's kind of it, really. Back in the day, back in the 90s and the 80s, you got a lot more variance between versions, and so you would end up with versions like Probotector, which were, air quotes, censored, even though there's still technically the same amount of violence as the North American and Japanese versions. They seem to think it was less violent because it's robots instead of people. I don't know what they were thinking there, but whatever the case, it's just a neat look back at history, and I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you all very much for watching. Stay tuned for the Starfield review. It is coming very soon, hopefully within the next week or two. I am putting in the final stages of that in between taking breaks like this one to make a quick DW plays or something like that, because I do need some of those breaks to maintain what little remains of my sanity for that. But stay tuned for that. Thank you all very much for watching. If you're interested in more Contra games or Probotector or whatever, I do have the video on Probotector 2, which was the NES Super C, but in Europe, and so you can check that out. And I'll probably do another one for the Game Boy version of Contra as well, that was also called Probotector, just as a DW Plays video, because they're interesting to see the differences, but they don't really deserve to be separated when it comes to things like MTOs or full reviews. I will, of course, take a look at the Contra games in a more official capacity, whether it be reviews or MTOs later on, but until then, it's just kind of neat to see these different versions. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in later videos.